are back again. Yes, we are back. It is Atlanta Discuss. This time we're going to bring up something very special. We're going to have a 5-part series for you this time around. It's going to be State of the Nation. Yes, State of the Nation, Nigeria. I've always said it. Nobody can ignore Nigeria. The largest concentration of Black people on the planet. We cannot ignore it. The country is acting behind schedule. We really need to look holistically, appraise, and empirically also what is really going wrong, what is happening, what has gone wrong, what are the foundational defects of that country. My name is Stella Balogun. I'm still your host and moderator. So, State of the Nation, we have a guest. A guest has been with us before, but then he is an extraordinary guest. We have Professor Chris Mustapha Nwaokobia Jr. Prof, welcome to Atlanta Discuss.
The pleasure is mine, my brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. You all know Prof is the convener of the Country First movement, was also a very high member and integral part of the Obidati campaign group. He's a former presidential candidate, he's a lawyer, he's a PR consultant. Most importantly, he's a patriot and is true to power. That's why it fits the billing of what we do here. Because you all know at Atlanta Discuss, we just go for the fact, nothing more. So let's kick the ground running and go for the jugular. There's no time to waste. Nigeria needs help. We need to salvage it. Prof, things are falling apart in Nigeria. The center cannot hold. Anarchy everywhere. If it's not people queuing for food, people are rioting, there's unemployment in the land, the dollar and the naira, the relationship has gone sour. We don't know, like they always say, the Zimbabwean dollar, the Francophone CFA, all have more value than naira. Everybody's worried, too many diplomatic fiasco. The Niger issue is there. Nigeria wanted to attack Niger. They sanctioned them. Now more or less begging Niger. After Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali withdrew from the ECOWAS, So it does look like there's really nothing going wrong. But let me ask you, I haven't looked at what is happening. What is really the state of the nation, Nigeria, now? From your point of view, what's really happening?
It's a mismatch of several issues, like you noted. Sadly, there's hunger in the land. There's pain, panic, and angst. People are in trouble. Like you said, Nigeria has refused to live up to its expectations. I was talking with someone just yesterday, and that's my way to start. And I said that the year of my bet, history has it that Malaysia came to Nigeria with Indonesia and a few other countries to pick up palm seedlings, $1 billion, $3 billion for what it has in quantum. It's about a country so blessed by God, but which is ineffable, blessed by God with monstrous resources. Yet, like you noted, the center cannot hold. The naira has become one of the poorest currencies in Africa. It's a tragedy. It's about a country where they held out great promises for its citizens. But today, about 25 years of democracy, the center cannot hold. It's about a country whose leadership has lost a sense of direction. It's about a country that has lost tact and finesse in economic management. It's about a country, indeed, the largest population in Africa, with the best minds across the world. Interestingly, you live in a country where the most intelligent, the most literate immigrant community in America is the Nigerian community, not the Jewish community, not the Irish community, the most literate, the most urbane and exposed. We run practically 30% of the sellers of the center of internet, the computers where ICs are produced, the home of Microsoft. Bill Gates once said that about 30% of those who manufacture, who write, who produce his works are Nigerians. Steve Jobs said About 23% of those who are behind the Apple brand are Nigerians. And with all this, the best open heart surgeon in the world, the father of modern fetal medicine, the one who operated a pregnant woman, brought out the fetus, treated the fetus, and returned it to the womb, is a Nigerian from Abeokuta. We have the best minds, and yet back home, everything has gone kaput. The system is kamikaze. The economy is in trouble and in tatters, and Nigerians are begging for food. That's how bad it is today. And it's as bad as the dollar beating the naira silly and the naira on a free fall. It's as bad as the electoral system, very unpredictable and unbelievable. It's as bad as government going after bureau de change operators because it is fighting to salvage the naira against the dollar. It's as bad as government begging the people to understand without a believable economic policy. That's how bad it is. It's as bad as when we wake up in the morning, your mobile phones are full with text messages and WhatsApp messages soliciting for as small as 1,000, 2,000, and you break down in tears. That's how bad it is. And as I talk to you, I have tears welling up in my eyes that a country that held out great promises for its citizens is bare-chested. The system is lampoonable because leadership has refused to take reasonable and resolute action. That's how bad it is. So what essentially, like you asked, what's the state of the nation? In a few words, kamikaze, higgledy-piggledy, topsy-turvy, trouble everywhere. Life has become nasty, selfish and short, to borrow the words of Thomas Hobbes. Man has gone in Nigeria, people have gone to their primitive nature. As you and I talk, the biggest business outside politics and corruption is kidnap for ransom. That's how bad it has become. And I pray that sooner rather than later something gives. I pray that leadership becomes responsible and responsive to its citizens. I pray that we begin effectively to address the fundamental issues of statehood and nationhood. Because indeed, hunger is indiscriminate of ethnicity, hunger is indiscriminate of religion, hunger is indiscriminate of region, and hunger is indiscriminate of partisanship. At this point, we're in the same Titanic. That's how bad it is.
That's really disheartening. Yeah, I mean, most people I've spoken to are criticizing the government of Bola Tinubu. Even a lot of his supporters have watched videos online, criticizing him, say they regret voting for him and all that. But I mean, I want to try and be fair to him, I'm asking you now, is there anything or any action this government under Bola Tinubu has taken that you can say it's something worthy of commendation? Is there any?
Let me start by saying first that there is indeed a difference between governmental programmatics that favor the people, that is proactive and effective, efficient and effectual. And there is the difference between populism. The biggest mistake he made was on Inauguration Day, pandering to populism, when without putting the record straight, without looking at the papers, without dotting the I's and crossing the T's, he said he was going to remove subsidy. First, the subsidy regime, is criminality of the highest order. And you ask yourself, what are you paying for? How much liter of crude or petrol do Nigerians consume daily? You don't even know. So what are you subsidizing? Without looking at the books, without dusting the I's and crossing the T's, he went and pandered to populism and said, oh, subsidy is over. You should know what you're proclaiming its death sentence or fatwa on. You should know. He didn't know. He didn't do a research on it. And so those who have been beneficiaries of the criminality and subterfuge went under to plot his fall. And as you and I talk a day, we hear that Nigeria is paying about 1 trillion per month now on subsidy. Buhari was paying about 300 to 400 billion per month. That's how bad it has become. So the criminals, as it were, are winning. Now, number two, without calling the proactive economic team and drawing an economic policy, he said he was going to float the naira. He was going to remove, if you like, obliterate the different market layers of the naira against the dollar. And then the next question you ask is, what are you exporting? What are you producing? On what is the naira going to fight for life when practically everything you do is denominated in the dollar? And then let me say this clearly. When it came, instead of perhaps saying, okay, we inherited a government whose economy is in trouble, we're going to use the vehicles we met, like the man in Argentina did, or the man in Ethiopia, the man in Zambia did. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to cut the cost of governance, they still went ahead to buy vehicles from overseas, and that is to further endanger the naira against the dollar. They still went on a spending spree. They're renovating this property, they're building this, they're building that. So I think that he started wrongly, very wrongly, and that's what we're paying for today. But I believe that, like Madiba, Nelson Rodich Lala Mandela would say, the time is always right to do right. And then you will know that I'm an incurable believer in the Nigerian project. I think my mom will always say to me, leave that country and come over. My mom lives with you in the U.S. And I said to her, Nigeria has my unalterable commitment, and for a new Nigeria will exist. And I believe that the time is always right to do right. And I believe that if this government is interested in fixing Nigeria, there are several things to do. And that is why I've told people that I know how bad it is. But I also think that there are solutions that we can, with immediate commitment, with patriotic verve, nerve, and fervor, with commitment for a new day, we can put these things to practice and begin to see a country that will and can indeed work. And so I believe that, yes, it may not be Uhuru yet, but yes, we're in the go-gotters now. We are perhaps not at the fringes of precipice. We're in the precipice. It's that bad. But can we come out of it? Can this country work? Can things get better? The answer is a capital letter yes. But that is if this government is committed to doing that which is proper, right, and right.
Okay, but I mean, based on what you've said, I mean, it does look like possibly the only good judgment was removing the subsidy, but it was just populist. There was no empirical analysis to ameliorate the suffering of the people.
He didn't study the books. He didn't study the books.
Yeah.
Had he studied the books, he would have been able to begin first by calling the NMPC Limited, the PPMC, and the importers. He would have called all of them, the stakeholders, to the table to say, first, I want to know in actuality how much fuel we consume daily.
Let me ask you this. He's made a lot of mistakes, no doubt. I mean, even the supporters said the same thing. Now, this level of rudderlessness that the ship of state is, looking like a rudderless, doesn't look like, maybe, yeah, there are people at the levels of power, but you don't feel it. Is the reason based on incompetency, or maybe the government is suffering a moral burden of the way the last election was maybe managed or hijacked. What do you think? Are they incompetent, or there's a moral burden that's weighing down the plane of Nigeria to take off under the leadership of Tinubu?
I think I would surprise you and I would surprise the listeners.
Mm.
The truth is that it was Abraham Lincoln who said first that no government is incompetent. The government has a plenitude of powers to get the best of minds to come on board.
True.
So it is the choice of government whether to get the best of minds to come on board or to walk rudderlessly. It is also clear that patriots transform their nations. It's beyond individualism. And then very unfortunately, it does appear like those who are around Mr. President, that those who are governed by what the street cliche that we use, me, tendencies for me, myself, and I. Because if they truly care about our country, there are things that are very easy to do. One of the first things to do is to get the best minds who are seized of our economic challenges to come on board. Get the figures right, because without proper data and statistics, whatever you do in governance is like shooting in the dark. And then fundamentally, he must call his cabinet together and say to them, what the darkest point of our nation. And we must work as a team to take this country out of the nadir to promise. And I say without equivocation that I do not doubt the ability. What I have as a problem with this present administration is the glaring absence of the political will to take proper steps. You know, when you have a country that is in trouble, what you do is not blame the past. Look at what is happening in Argentina today. The immediate past, and the former vice president of Nigeria gave that instance. Bola Ahmed Tinubu took power just about the same time at which the man in Argentina took power. But what you do is deliberately surround yourself with people who understand the urgency of now and the challenges of the present day. I think that the first thing we must do is to call the president back to proper governmental programmatics. What do? The economy is in trouble. Get the best economic team. Interestingly, yesterday we heard that he has named a new team of economic advisors. Then the next thing you throw away subsidy. And let me tell you that America subsidizes agriculture and energy very substantially, because you don't impoverish your people in the name of following the Bretton Woods, the World Bank, and the IMF programmatics. Nobody does that. You don't take your country out of poverty, taking the decisions of economic bodies that are profit-oriented and profit-driven. Look at what India is doing today. Most of the advice from the IMF, the World Bank, and the Bretton Woods organizations are thrown away, and they're looking at how to build a country that their citizens will be proud of. You don't tell me that the World Bank and the IMF have told you that you must remove subsidy. What is the percentage of Nigerians who are doing well economically? What is your GDP? What is your salary and wage bill like? Do you have a take-home that can take Nigerians home? That's the minimum wage. If you don't have these things, you don't come out to tell me that you must follow certain World Bank and IMF programmatics. You don't do that. There are fundamental issues that you must effectively look at. And one of them, if you must take your country out of poverty, out of disease, out of despondency to promise, is to effectively overhaul your fiscal policy. It's to effectively look at your economic planning. It's to effectively get eggheads who understand. You just don't call. Yesterday we had a meeting with private sector profiteers, permit my choice of words. You cannot tell Dangote to sell cement for 5,000 when He's planning so much money and he wants profit. You cannot tell me that you will tell Abdul Samad to sell cement for 5,000 when his cost of production is about 7,000 or so. There are fundamental issues that this government must begin to address. The basics. It must overhaul its economic policy. This government must also look at how it was my mentor, Martin Luther King Jr., who said a long time ago that true compassion is not in tossing a coin at a beggar. It is in ensuring that the edifice that produces beggars is pulled down. It is ensuring that you address the fundamental issues of statehood and nationhood. It is ensuring that you get patriots and statesmen on board the platforms and layers of leadership. It is not about politics, partisanship, and cronyism. And I'm saying this deeply. The presidency of Bola Ahmed Tinubu is responsible for the deepening poverty, the pain, and the angst that we today have. We knew that Buhari was a failure. But some of those who were Buharis told us that when Buhari leaves, we will wish that he was still there. And maybe they had a benefit of understanding of the fact that those who were coming were not prepared for leadership. But I think that those who are around Bola Ahmed Tinubu must cover their faces in shame. If Buhari will be in Daura somewhere laughing at him today, then those who are around Bola Ahmed Tinubu should cover their faces in shame. Because I think that Tinubu, by every length or every fluke of imagination, is far more urbane and far more exposed than a Buhari. So why are things going from bad to worse? I want to say fundamentally, and you have listened to me at several forums, I've said that Bola Ahmed Tinubu must begin to lead Nigeria the way of the things he said whilst holding superintendence over the state of Lagos. You must be true to what you say on paper. This country cannot move out of poverty, out of disease, despondency, and want to promise without some fundamental shake-up of the dysfunctional system that we have. I've said, and interestingly, I'm happy that when I tune to the electronic media, both the terrestrial and the social media, the online press, I'm seeing people using the same words I've used repeatedly. The time has come for us to deploy the silver bullet, which is restructuring. We need a new set of policies. We need a new approach to leadership that fundamentally must overhaul this pseudo-federalism. We have a unitary system that cannot take Nigeria out of poverty to promise. We have an economic policy that does not work for anything whatsoever. We have a knee-jerk economic operators who, instead of seeing to how we become productive, they're chasing bureau-de-change operators from pillar to post. We hear the CBN governor. I've listened to him a few times. It does not evoke confidence and faith. It does not sound believable. And that's part of the problems that we have. Even as bad as Emefiele was, most times when he addressed the press and talked about economic policy and programmatics, he sounded far more confident than the man who at the helm of the affairs of the CBN today. I believe that going forward, Nigeria can come out of this morass to promise. But fundamentally, certain things must be done. We must overhaul our economic policy. This government must cut the cost of governance and walk away from profligacy to deliberate, if you like, use the word miserly appropriation of our resources. With respect to security challenges, this government must look the way of state and regional police. With respect to resource and revenue sharing, this government must end this era of state governments acting like beggarly appendages of the center, when every month state governors come to Abuja to share from the federation account. It didn't work. It has not worked anywhere, not even in communist China. Do you have this kind of unitary system? In communist China, the regions, the separate governments take directives from the Communist Party, but the regions are able to operate and ensure that there is competition and industry. Here, local governments are as good as dead. Governors are bazaars at their state levels, and the federal government is involved in the provision of newspapers to the federal government college in my hometown of Ibuzo. The federal government is involved in buying IC for a computer in the federal government college in the Janiki. The federal government is involved in the purchase of teaching boards in the federal government college in Boko. That's how bad it is. A meddlesome, overbearing, and cumbersome government cannot do anything. There's nowhere in the world where you run this kind of unitary system and call it a federalism. Just about everything about Nigeria is falsehood, deceit, perfidy, and mendacity. And I think that the time has come for us to live by the truth. It was Uthman Lamfodio in 1806 who said that conscience is an open wound, only truth can heal it. The time has come for patriots, statesmen, and leaders at every strata of society to begin to speak the truth to power. The only way to come out of the morass is to begin to ask this government to look at the books dispassionately, see where we have missed it, correct our wrongs. You know, a few weeks ago, I heard something about, I don't know what it was called, whether the ways and means of government when the Buhari government threw away about 30 trillion in pursuit of, I don't know what they call it. You know, this country has become a huge joke. 30 trillion in ways and means of governance, of fixing the economy. And repeatedly, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration has told Nigerians that it's going to continue with the policies of Muhammadu Buhari. And then you ask yourself, why won't the dollar continue to pummel the naira? When you know, and the dollar does know, because the dollar does not listen to political gerrymandering. The naira doesn't listen to the partisan envy goals of leadership. The economy is not subject to political messages and what you call sloganeering and propaganda. The economy responds to real, authentic issues. The stimuli responds to the forces of demand and supply. And so, if you like, get 10 spokespersons of Mr. President, they won't make the economy better. What you need is sound governmental programmatic, sound data analysis, sound efforts at ensuring that leadership is responsible and responsive to the people. And to this end, I'll give you 3 quick instances. About 7 years ago, I talked about how to move an economy in trouble away from trouble to progress. And my big brother, Patu Tommy, asked me a few questions when I came out with that police programmatic. But you know what? In less than 3 months, Saudi Arabia took it whole line and sinker. And what was it? I said that amongst the Nigerian noble rich, amongst the governmental profiteers that we've had since till 1999. This country, if it wants to do right, and that was part of my advice to the immediate past president, Buhari, you call these Nigerians who have been around the corridors of power since 1999 and tell them, I am not here to victimize you, but I know that between you, since 1999, are trillions of naira. Please give us back at least 80% of those resources to jumpstart government and fix our economy. If you do not, then we'll take you to court with the papers that we have and the records that we have. That was what the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia did. And then, so many of his brothers, cousins, and nephews brought back billions of dollars to help restart the Saudi economy. In Dubai, they are doing the same thing today. In Zambia, governments are taking that initiative. We're not here to victimize you, but the time has come for us to take our country out of the nada to promise. Have you read in the news how much a certain 32-year-old boy who was the immediate past PA to a president has, and how much he paid to buy a vessel? Are you aware of the fact that between him, Malami, and Abba Kyari and a few others, about $82 billion is allegedly floating and revolving and rotating amongst them? And you're going to the World Bank to get $2 billion. You're going to the Bretton Woods associations to ask for $1.5 billion. Who does that? This government must understand that the time to sit immediate past stakeholders and present stakeholders on the table and say, we can't continue like this. We all have sinned, and we must take our country out of poverty to promise. And so we must all sacrifice. Between these people are trillions of dollars. They must bring out these monies if we truly want to make Nigeria work.
Let me quickly ask you this. You said he lacks the political will to take the right decisions, and from what you have said so far, it does mean that part of those decisions he's lacking the will to take is to probe the past government, which people in his own government have clearly said, yes, they inherited more or less an empty treasury, a dead economy, but he clearly lacks a political will to confront Buhari head on. Why do you think he lacks that will? Why do you think it's so difficult, considering nothing is working well for his own government? And if he doesn't go to the past, he probably won't be able to address the future. Is he shooting himself?
I'm going to sound a bit pragmatic here. I will sound a bit pragmatic here.
Okay.
I may not be comfortable with the word probe. I will be much more comfortable with taking proactive steps. The present administration is of the APC stock. The immediate past administration is of the same stock. You have partisan interests. You have tendencies that are strong and deep-rooted. You also have this cliche: he who is innocent should cast the first stone. He whose hands are clean should deal the first punch. And so almost always people will say, but how did you come this far? The point is, admit, like the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia did, admit that we have all offended our country. Admit that at different points we may have all put our hands in the cookie jar. Admit that we may have all done wrong at some point. Now, the challenge of nationhood calls for proactive action. And say to all of them, I am forfeiting so and so to get Nigeria back on track. And so I want all of you, we have these papers and these records, to forfeit so and so to get Nigeria working. If you do not, and that was what the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia did, if you do not, we'll take up legal actions. And you find out that so many of them will be willing to return
Mhm.
so many of these resources. And then in 2, 3 days, you don't need a soothsayer to tell you. You don't need Nostradamus and his treatise and papers to tell you that the naira will rise up strongly against the dollar. Um, these things appear to those who are unwilling to do right, like the preachment in the wilderness, like the prognosis of men who are drunk in the waters of petroleum. But I think that if you must take this country out of the nadir, you must overhaul your economic policy. You must effectively tie the ropes, not necessarily expecting, because that was why I fell out with the immediate past administration. You remember I was a DG of Change Ambassadors. I was one of those who got, we told Nigerians that we were the change that they wanted. And 3 months into that administration, the former Minister of Information said that change begins with you. And I said to them, I said, this was what we told Nigerians. We told them that we're going to change Nigeria and make things better. And to tell them that change begins with them is falsehood. It was Mitt Romney that said a long time ago that change begins from the top. Leadership shows the way. And I remember growing up under a father who was a philosopher. My dad told me once that you will be absolutely unfair to a woman who's a prostitute when you come to her house to ask her 18-year-old daughter to come for a virginity test.
Mm.
He told me that it would be absolutely unfair to come to the house of a notorious armed robber to ask his 20-year-old son to show us why he is not a mass servant in a church. It would be absolutely unfair, knowing exactly what we're facing as a nation, to think that things will get better except this administration takes proactive steps. It is beyond partisanship. It's beyond those tendencies, because some of their people who are stuck in the shame of the pervasive failure across the country are beginning to pander to ethnicity and partisan envy goals. But I think that the time has come for us to understand. I've used this word several times. Last, we'll all come to the dining table. All of us will chop breakfast if we have. All of us will chop dinner if we have. And the quality of that breakfast is what will determine whether this administration is doing right or wrong. And so, no matter how much you try to politique, the scorecard is out on the streets. In Ibadan last week, young boys and young girls were on the streets calling out against hunger. As you and I talk today in Lagos, young boys and young girls are out on the streets calling out against hunger. In Niger State, Mina, and its environs, Nigerians are up against hunger. In the ancient city of Ilorin, Nigerians have been calling out against hunger. I want to ask Mr. President to look away from whether you wield the broom or the umbrella, or whether your logo is Papa, Mama, Pekin. Nigerians are united in the quest for a new day, a new republic, a new deal, and a new tendency in leadership. And whether he likes it or not, that is the minimum that Nigerians expect. Whether the APC likes it or not, if you do not do right, they will see everybody as a witch or perhaps a wizard. And that's why I don't know whether you know that in Nigeria today, they're telling us that from tomorrow, your WhatsApp, your messages, and your calls will be monitored. You will begin to look for witches and wizards where they're not. The major challenge is the leadership must take initiative and do right.
Okay, I like the way you ended it. You were talking about agitations and all that. I mean, so if you remember very well, the last time you were in this program, on one of the episodes the first time you came. You mentioned, I don't know if you can remember, you mentioned that we can convince, we're talking about solutions, the way out of the morass in the ensuing melee. You said
Mm.
we can convince our legislators, senators, House of Rep members, give them superior argument. After all, they all see what's happening to legislate law that will benefit our people. But subsequently, I interviewed Professor Chidi Odinkalu. I'm sure you know him very well. And Professor
Yeah,
Patutomi, you're also very familiar with him. They said that Nigeria needs a political solution even before talking to legislators, even because I think somebody else even said, I think Pastor Ito said we need a conference where we can judge and talk now and come up with a new constitution. But in Professor Odinkalu's estimate, he said, look, you need to agree as ethnic nationality. Because I'm actually talking about ethnic agitations everywhere now. The Middle Belters are carving a serious niche for themselves. The Yorubas, even though their son is the president, I've heard them. I interviewed a gentleman from the UK. He's a Labour Party councillor, but he's a Yoruba guy. He's one of the people championing Ududua Republic. And the Igbos, they are ready to go. They are, eminently so, So the point I'm trying to make is with all this ethnic agitation, what do you think is the way out? Do you think we need to agree? Do you still think we need to sit down and talk? Or, it doesn't look like maybe we even want to live together. Because I've heard some people say, oh, yeah, we can't have Igbo president. Some have said the Yoruba man can't be trusted. The Hausas are the problem. So if there's so much distrust in the land, that's enough to stop the country, from even growing in the first instance, So what do you
I,
still
I,
think?
I I
Would
think
you
you have
say that?
sounded. I think you have sounded like a clairvoyant. In that question,
You said
in
you
that
said that the
question,
last time. You said
yes,
that the last time.
and let
You
me
said
tell
it
you
again.
why perhaps your alliance should be Nostradamus. I
Okay.
say this without. I'm not trying to patronize you now,
Yeah.
but the small gap between what I talked about
Mm,
and what others have said is the fact that oftentimes in providing solutions, we forget that laws make society, not
mm,
political will. Laws make society, and I'm going to be very deep here. Do you know
mm,
those who founded America? I'm going to break your heart. They were bootleggers. They were criminals. They were drug addicts.
mhm,
They were drug peddlers. Those who founded America. Go through history. That was why at the beginning, they didn't want anybody to do more than one term. And one term of 1 year, that's American history. They wanted a situation where nobody oversteps his bounds because they knew their tendencies. America wasn't built by angels or saints. Go study the private lives of Jefferson, Adams, and Co. You find out what makes society work is not positive morality. Thank God my brother Chidi Odikalo is a lawyer. It's not positive morality, it's the law. Do you know the people with the highest proclivity for criminality in the world do not allow corruption in their country? Chinese everywhere are known for criminality. They have a nickname for bribery, under table money. It's a Chinese word, under table money. But you can't do it in China. If you do it, they sentence you to death.
mm,
Laws, not positive morality. Let me tell you why we're where we are. I'm going to borrow a cliche from the Holy Book. It says, if the foundation be faulty, what can the
mm,
righteous do? Yeah, you gather the ethnic nationalities, you gather men of political character, plumage, and heights, and all that, and they decide. If you don't pass it to law, it cannot make things right. You might have 1,001 political summits on state police. If you don't pass it to law, you won't have state police. You understand what I'm trying to say? So when I talk about the need for restructuring, which all of them in various languages have talked about, you know, uh, when you have the call for Yodua Republic, why do you have a call for Biafra? Why are the Middle Belters saying we want to go if Nigeria is not working? It is because the structure is dysfunctional, defective,
mm,
and turbulent. And so what must we do? I've given lectures on this. And for the benefit of our listeners, there are three things that can be done. You have a conference, like most of my brothers you mentioned or talked about, where you will overhaul a structure. That's what we call restructuring. It's a word that came into the dictionary in 1942. You restructure a defective structure, superstructure. And so, unfortunately, the former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, convened a sovereign national a conference where they agreed on certain normatives, but he did not take it to the National Assembly. You see where they come in. Pass the resolution to law. Now, if you call all the traditional rulers and all the ethnic nationalities to a table where they agree on perhaps a return to regionalism, a return to what the British are practicing, parliamentary system of government, as opposed to this very expensive presidential system. If they all agree on it, and there is no consummate political will to pass it to law, it will count for nothing but a job. So what I'm saying is that there is need for a sovereign national conference. And how do we get that done? Because that's the question. That's what should bother us. And because members of the National Assembly, some of them are part of maybe a 900-member committee that can sit for 3 to 6 months. But rework and overhaul our constitution. And what you have is a brand new constitution that you can truly say is congruent with the aspirations of the Nigerian people. And then you can say, we the people have been elected to make to ourselves laws. This is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, where you have true fiscal federalism, evolution of power, resource control, where you have state police and the likes, and that comes to law. You have a new law, and that encapsulates what Professor Patrick told me, Professor Chidi Dinkalo and co. have asked for. Then another way to go is for the president, the executive as we have today, to come by an executive bill to the National Assembly saying that the executive president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria cannot continue to tar roads from Karunamuda to Kapanchan, from Kapuzo. Next to it, every state should be responsible for education. As the president of Nigeria, I want to be in charge of defense, foreign policy, currency. I want to be in charge of custom and excise and immigration. Every other thing in the exclusive legislative list should go devolve to the state and the local governments and pursue and lobby that that bill comes to law. That's what Nigerians are asking for. You can't have a meddlesome federal government that is involved in tiring roads, in schools, in medical care, and you think that government will succeed. You know, we're living a lie as a nation. That's the second way to achieve that. Then the third way, we had a constitution in 1963 that was called the Republican Constitution. That was the constitution that the Nigerians agreed upon. And that constitution had what you call true federalism. It was on that constitution that even with the crisis of the television in Southwest before France, they built a tower, the Cocoa House before any other country in Africa. They were doing well. The Southeast built schools and were doing well. Don't stop that Republican Constitution. Ensure that revenue allocation is done from bottom up, where the states control 50% of their resources, pay 20% to a common pool for the federal government, and then 30% to a dedicated account to help other states in terms of emergency. When you do all this, these are very simple things. Yeah, I may I may have articulated better than most people, but that's the way to go. And that's what restructuring is all about. That will etiolate the pre-election for Odua Republic. That will etiolate the call by Igbos for Biafra. That will etiolate the call for Middle Belt Republic. And when you do that, you have a country that truly works. Because at the end of the day, we will have the return of the pyramids of granite in the north. We will have the return of the silos of grains and maize. We'll have the return of our wealth from cocoa. We'll have the return of our palm produce wealth from the east and the middle belt. And we will have wealth coming from coal. That way, you will have states and regions that are doing very well. And let me correct this, because there's also this perfid in the public space. I've heard some people who otherwise are educated say that there are states that are not viable. There is no state that is not viable in Nigeria. You see, I asked them, is Singapore viable? What mineral resources does Singapore have? You know, it is lack of my father also taught me something. He said, and this is very important for those who are listening, that my son, try and struggle to get your brain to work. That 90% of even professors and PhD holders have their brains in the refrigerator. What is important is that we can just stop the 1963 Republican Constitution, replace where you have a region with the states, the 36 states and Abuja. And then when we do that, we'll take it to the National Assembly, lobby the National Assembly to understand the imperativeness of this restructuring. And then when we do that, by Jove, they will understand and buy into it. And then we have a new constitution that understands that our regions should be able to thrive, our states should be able to use their wealth for progress. And I was talking about, and this is very important, about the need for us to debunk the falsehood about some states not being viable. Very importantly, what is the greatest wealth given to mankind by God? It's a human persona, human resources. That's what has made Singapore what it is. That's what has made several Japan what it is. So I believe that what we must do is to invest in agriculture, invest in human resources, in education, and then at the end of the day, you find out that there is no space in this country that is not a humongous resource for greatness. That's exactly what this country needs to succeed. So I believe that those who are calling for a new legal framework, those who are calling for a meeting of ethnic nationalities, those who are calling for political will are all saying the same thing. We're all calling for the restructuring of a massively dysfunctional superstructure. It is only through the restructuring of this enterprise that Nigeria can rise again and truly be the giant of Africa, an example of leadership in the third world.
You know, this solution you proffered has been proffered by so many, like I said, and it just looked like as a country we're going around in circle, we're more or less circumnavigated. Now, my final question to you is this: if we don't do the needful, how much time do you think we have before the cookie crumbles? Because it doesn't look like we have too much time. We have more or less boxed ourselves into a corner. I'm not trying to be a doomsday prophet. I'm just looking from it politically, from experience in the past. Almost every revolution I've read about is hunger, driven, So that hunger we have in abundance right now. But like I said, I don't want to be a doomsday prophet, but if we don't do the needful, how much time do you think we have to play with?
You're not a doomsday prophet, or Your arguments are not within the precincts of doomsday prophecy. The truth is, like I said initially, we are in the precipice,
Mm.
no longer at the precipice, no longer at the fringes of the precipice. We are in the abyss. We are in trouble. When you see young boys and young girls out on the streets calling out against hunger, then you know that we are in trouble. Armageddon is here. And what we must do is do the needful quickly and with alacrity. So I do sincerely think that if there is anybody who truly loves President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it is to give this interview to him and his team. If there is anybody who truly cares about a new Nigeria, it is to give this expose and exposition to his government. If there is anybody who wants us to come out of the nada to promise, it is to take this interview to them and let them look at it. It's like the prophecies and the writings of Nostradamus. If we do not do what we must do now, you're not going to go in search of the witches and the wizards. No, they are here. You're not going to go in search of, this cliche, the witch cried last night and the child dies this morning. No, the witch has cried repeatedly. It's the death of the child that we're looking at now. When Buhari refused to do what was proper, when Buhari refused to invest properly, when he refused to invest in the economy, when he allowed profligacy and looting and corruption to underscore his administration, the witch cried. Now we're at that point where, at best, we're in the abyss. How do we get out of this abyss? It is for government to show the political will and call those who my brother and Negbo Dele Momodu call the owners of Nigeria, call those who have been at the core of our politics together to say the time to give back to Nigeria what we fraudulently took from Nigeria is now. We must jumpstart and restart this economy to bring back the things you took from Nigeria, like other people have done in other climes, and let's restart this country for the good of all. There is no more time. It is now or never.
No. Thank you, Professor. You are always true to power. You say it the way it is. That's why you're a delight for Atlanta discourse all the time. We have been talking
Thank
to
you so much.
Professor Trace Mustapha Nwaokobia Jr., erudite scholar, extraordinary patriot. He's seen it, done that, former presidential aspirant. He's saying it for everybody to hear. He's not the only one saying it. We don't have too much time. If anybody that read about the French Revolution will know that that revolution didn't even come as far as what is happening in Nigeria before everything erupted, just like every other revolution all over the world. We shouldn't push our luck too far. Our politicians should not push their luck too far. Our military men should not push their luck too far. Our religious leaders should not push their luck too far. Our traditional rulers should not push their luck too far. The citizens clearly have abdicated responsibility. We've said that in the past. The office of the citizen has to rise up. Nobody is asking for war. Nobody is asking for a genocide. Nobody is asking for anything. We just need to sit down and discuss politically the future of the country. We have to navigate our future. There has to be equity, justice, and fair play. Those are the premise to which any country will move forward. The largest concentration of Black people in the world, the beacon of hope in 1960 when it got independent, right now is a shock to the system and is an extraordinary disaster. We've said it before, Nigeria was weak, now it's collapsing. Only God knows what's going to happen after it eventually does. So, Prof, thank you so much. We're going to call it a wrap there. Don't worry, we're going to knock on your door again. There's a reason you're the one that's the first person we're interviewing for the part 1 in the 5-part series of State of the Nation. The State of the Nation like you said, I'll use your word, it's not in a good shape. In America, when the president addresses the country's State of the Union, our State of the Union is strong. In Nigeria, it's the opposite. The president knows it. The other politicians know it. So this is the time for real patriots to stand up. And we all can be patriots, irrespective of what part of the divide you're on or what
That's right.
level of the strata you are. So thank you once again, Prof. Next week,
God
Friday,
bless
we'll come
you.
to you
God
with a
bless
part two.
Nigeria.
Thank you so much. It's a wrap there. To our viewers in all the 7 continents, we say thank you very much. Have a fantastic week ahead. God bless you all.